let's talk about a puzzle. In Nigeria, you see this incredible, deep religious devotion everywhere. But at the same time, you see widespread poverty. So why is that? We're going to unpack that very paradox by digging into the core arguments from Daramola Joseph Omoyele's book, The Altar of Accountability. And this is really the fundamental question the book tackles. How can a nation so rich in faith still struggle so much with poverty and failing systems? It's a huge contradiction, and the author breaks it down, not with any kind of judgment, but with some really sharp analysis. Okay, so let's dive right in. The author, Daramola Joseph Omoyele, basically argues that this whole situation is no accident. It's not just some unfortunate coincidence. He says it's actually a structural problem, where the systems of belief have gotten tangled up with the systems of power and money. Now, we've got to be super clear about this right from the start. This analysis isn't a critique of anyone's personal faith. Not at all. Instead, it zooms in on the human-made institutions, the organizations, the hierarchies that have been built in the name of that faith. And that brings us to the absolute bedrock of the book's argument. It's this one core distinction. And honestly, if you don't get this part, the rest of the analysis won't really click. And here it is, straight from the author. The idea is that faith is your personal, internal experience, but religion, that's the organized, human-built system created to house that faith. The author's whole point is that these two very different things have been dangerously blurred together. And you can see that difference laid out right here. Faith is personal, it's internal, it's a matter of your own conscience. But the institution of religion, well, that's organized, it's governed by people, and it belongs to a structure, not just to you. So here's the kicker. According to the book, when people start to believe that questioning the institution is the same thing as questioning God, well, that institution gets almost unlimited power. It can operate without any checks and balances because any kind of criticism can just be dismissed as a spiritual attack. So how does all this power play out when money gets involved? Well, the book spends a lot of time analyzing what it calls the commercialization of faith, where spirituality itself starts to feel like a transaction. That's a pretty blunt statement, but it really gets to the heart of the argument. The idea is that religious spaces begin to function more like businesses, with branding, revenue goals, and competition, all while being protected by this shield of faith. And what's really fascinating is the shift in language that the book points out. You start hearing all these words from the world of finance, right? Investment, returns, multiplication. Giving money is framed less like an act of generosity and more like a required payment you have to make to get your breakthrough. And according to Omoyele, this system is incredibly effective at targeting the people who are most vulnerable. Your personal hardship isn't seen as a social problem anymore. It's reframed as a spiritual test. And the way to pass that test? Give more. The author calls this what it is: extraction, not charity. The engine driving a lot of this is what the book calls the prosperity doctrine. It's a powerful idea. If you're wealthy, it's a sign God approves of you. If you're poor, well, that's a spiritual problem you need to fix, usually with more faith and more giving. And you can see how this cleverly takes all the attention away from things like bad economic policies or a lack of jobs. Now, this pileup of wealth and influence doesn't just stay inside the church walls. The book argues it spills out and has huge consequences for society and politics, creating these massive centers of power that basically operate with zero public scrutiny. And that leads to a pretty simple question, doesn't it? Who is watching the money? I mean, we expect companies and governments to open their books and be audited, so the book asks, why are these incredibly powerful religious institutions so often exempt from that same standard? And when you actually compare the accountability standards side by side, it's pretty stark. For a normal company, external audits and financial disclosures are just standard practice. But in many of the religious institutions the author analyzes, that stuff is uncommon, optional, and sometimes actively discouraged. So, how is this lack of oversight maintained? The book argues that spiritual language becomes a kind of defense mechanism. Phrases like, touch not the anointed, are used to take a simple financial question and turn it into a disrespectful, even dangerous act of spiritual rebellion. It's a very effective way to shut down questions. And the political fallout from this is huge. Political leaders can get a kind of moral stamp of approval by cozying up to powerful religious figures. And then, any criticism of those politicians can be spun as ungodly.
The author argues this whole system discourages people from speaking out, normalizes silence, and weakens democracy.
All right, so after all that pretty heavy critique, what's the solution? The altar of accountability doesn't just leave us in despair. It actually offers a path forward, and it's all about individuals reclaiming their own power. The final argument is about reform, not rejection. Omoyele isn't saying people should abandon their faith, not at all. The idea is to consciously reclaim it, to separate it from institutional control and let it be a personal moral compass again, not a tool for an organization. So the book proposes some really concrete steps for people to take. First, think critically. Ask questions about teachings and ask where the money is going. Second, give consciously. Support organizations you know are transparent. Third, demand that transparency from the big, powerful institutions. And finally, learn to recognize when emotional tools like guilt and fear are being used to control you. This quote really just sums up the whole civic-minded heart of the book's message. The ability to question power, whether that power is political, corporate, or religious, is presented as an absolute must-have for any society that wants to be genuinely free. And so, we'll end with the same provocative question the author leaves us with. It completely recenters the whole debate. Is the point to protect institutions from being questioned, or is it to protect people from the harm that can come from unchecked power? That's a question we're thinking about.